computer. Awesome. We are recording and we're just going to go live now. Beautiful. What I always like to do is just jump onto Facebook on my phone as well, because sometimes you don't know when it's actually live and it likes to play funny buggers with you. So we should be live theoretically if I can get on. Okay, we are live. Just one second. Try and get everyone in the room. See if we can get everyone. Everyone, we are live. So annoying that I have to do this once I'm live. I kind of like waste a minute of everyone on replay's time. Awesome. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Those of you who are watching live, this is a totally different time, different day. This is a different one. I know it's a little bit of a surprise. Those of you watching on replay as well, thank you so much for coming along. And this one's going to be an awesome one. It's been a while since we've had a guest expert in. And I stumbled across the amazing Anita on Instagram and I just sent her a message straight away. I was like, seen one reel, like your content. Do you want to come and speak with me? So, so we've only known each other just a couple of weeks, but I want to introduce you all to Anita Marriott. She is the vegan mindset coach. And she helps vegans survive and thrive in a non-vegan world by giving them the skills, the tools to take full ownership and accountability and responsibility for their thoughts, for their feelings and their actions and results. So this way they get to be and achieve anything that they want to be. So whether you are dabbling in a plant-based diet, whether you're just wanting to shift a few pounds, or even if you are fully fledged vegan who puts themselves on the front line advocating, this is for you. Now, while Anita is very specifically a vegan mindset coach, a lot of what we're going to talk about today is very transferable. I think what we're going to talk about mainly is like mindset and how to control your mindset, right? How we can take control of our mind, master our minds. And that is a really important thing for anyone to be able to do. And if you are inside this group, I guarantee you this content is going to be incredibly valuable for you. So thank you so much for coming along, Anita. I really appreciate you and not thinking that I'm just some sort of spam bot on Instagram being like, hey, come into my world. But yeah, I very much look forward to seeing your business thrive as well over the next couple of years. But for now, could you feel free to like jump on and give us like a little bit of a rundown? Like, hello, how are you?
Yeah. Hello, I'm well. Thank you, Bianca, and thank you for having me on. I'm very excited to be here. So, yes, you've given me a great little intro there. Yes, I am the vegan mindset coach. I have been 8 years vegan, went vegan for the animals. And the reason that I'm really here is because I went through this thing that I believe 100% of vegans or people who go vegan for the animals go through, which is a term coined by a wonderful vegan psychologist called Claire Mann. It's called dystopia with a V, so just like dystopia, but beginning with a V, which is defined as the anguish of being vegan in a non-vegan world. And I totally went through this when I first became vegan. So it's made up of two components. One is, first of all, the realization of the enormity of the horror and the abuse and the exploitation that animals go through in our systems of production and consumption in the world. That's the first part of it. But then the second component, which I think is often even worse for us, is the almost zombie-like collusion of almost everyone around us with this dystopian, dark kind of world that we suddenly open our eyes to when we become vegan. And of course, what most of us experience is that realization, and we make the decision that we can't eat animal products ever again. And we think that when we share what we have learned with the kind, compassionate, intelligent people who we know and love, that surely they will hear it and they will be like, oh my goodness, of course, I need to also go vegan immediately. And that doesn't happen. Like 99% of the time, it doesn't happen. Most of the time, what ends up happening is they feel their cognitive dissonance raised. So suddenly they come to realize that their values aren't matching their actions when it comes to the treatment of animals. And they feel judged and they feel shamed and they shoot the messenger.
Mm.
And so, what very often this leads to for us is an alienation and a distancing from the people who often are the people that we've been closest to and have loved and known the longest. And this is a key part of dystopia, that destruction of those personal connections. And so I'd gone through it. I had a really hard time. I pulled myself through it with the resources from Claire Mann and others. But I realized that there was a real gap there because short of going to a psychologist, there really wasn't much in the way of sort of mental health and emotional health supports for people like myself. So unless they were able to do the research and pull themselves out of it, there was this real gap in helping people to deal with their mindset around this issue. And so that's what led me to become a coach. So I went ahead and studied coaching, did a fair bit of sort of psychology as part of that. And here I am equipped to help others to get through that and not only survive, but then ultimately thrive in a non-vegan world so that we can be just the most, irresistible example to non-vegans to follow.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that introduction. I myself have been through this. My partner is in it at the moment. And I think there's also a level of if I can make my own phrase up, like a histentopia as well, where we've got a healthy
Mm.
mindset shift to make as well. Where me and my partner are really at the moment, I've done the whole vegan thing. Like I've come to not accept it, but I've come to deal with it. And I think where me and my partner keep getting butting our heads up with the world is as well that there is a healthy block. So you go out and you go out to a restaurant and you just want food, but you're given junk food, right? So
Mm.
I very much feel like you've got this as a vegan mindset, and then you've got a healthy mindset. And then, oh my goodness, if you're vegan and you're trying to be healthy and you want to eat good, healthy, clean food that's not just laden in chemicals and oils and fats and sugar and salt, then it's very difficult. And I feel like there's kind of like a little essence of that as well in being healthy. However, I totally hear what you're saying with the veganism, and it's just it's very, very different to the healthy thing. Like that is like kind of a similar thing. But when you look and you can see it, that everyone just says once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yes.
And it builds a lot of frustration, anger, resentment. We question a lot. Like I went through a stage where I was, my family, I very much love them and adore them, but they're animal people. And so for me, there was that essence of, can I actually trust you? Like,
Mhm.
who are you? Um,
Yes,
and I started noticing that I was kind of like distancing myself. I'm like, I can't support you as a person if you're supporting that. Would you
exactly.
support a human being be raped or killed or what have you? No. If you call yourself an animal person, you're just a hypocrite at this stage. So, I've been through this a lot with my family and my own mind. I'm like, oh, who do I trust? Who do I speak to
Yeah,
nowadays? Um,
absolutely.
so it can be really shocking, and I think the psychology behind the psychology of it is very important to have a look through and help people out with, and that's what you're doing, which is amazing.
Absolutely. And what you raised there is exactly that loss of emotional safety on both sides. So not only do we as the vegan experience this, it's like, do I even really know you? I
Mm,
thought you were a different person. Do I know anything? Suddenly the ground is pulled out from underneath us. We're completely destabilized. And often our very core, like our family, our parents, the people who've always been our anchor, suddenly they're no longer there for us because we can't actually trust them in a way. And conversely, while we're in this emotional upheaval, we don't realize that they're experiencing something very similar from us because now they're experiencing us as somebody who's coming at them very forcefully with a great deal of judgment and shaming, and they're feeling hurt by that, and they're feeling unsafe and insecure in our connection. So it starts to just rupture that connection for both of us. We both start to put our guard up and distance, and it is tragic for both of us. And where it is coming from is that none of us are taught how to communicate effectively. None
Mm,
of us are taught in school how to have proper, difficult conversations because these are really difficult issues. They go to our values and then to our integrity with those values. Are we acting in accordance with the values we hold dear? And to try to hold someone accountable, which is ultimately what we're trying to do with our friends and family here, in such a way that they can actually hear it and be in empathy with us and in compassion with the animals rather than feeling judged and shamed. That's the key. That's what we're
mm,
not being taught. And that's a big part of my focus, the thing that I help my clients to do, so that they're able to communicate really effectively with those people, so that those people can truly hear them and not put up those barriers. And then we can become a team together. Even if they don't become vegan immediately, they can absolutely become vegan allies, and we can become a team together facing a non-vegan world, a world
mm,
that is out there, creating a lot of deception, trying to normalize all the horror.
mm.
If they can understand our experience of the world, they can start to become our ally and support us in the face of that world. And at the same time, it starts to open them up to some of these concepts and changes in attitude.
Do you know what? Like, there's a lot of frustration and anger, and resentment when people go vegan. And there was this, I'm just speaking from experience. And that's just because it's a shocking thing that's happening underneath everyone's noses, and everyone chooses to be ignorant towards it. That's all it is we choose. Like, nobody on this planet actually doesn't know where meat comes from. Like, unless you're a baby, right? We all know, we just choose ignorance. And that's just what it is. I chose ignorance for many, many years. But there's this anger. It's like, this is not just ignorance. This is ignorant on a mass scale. A mass scale. And it's like, like, we just get so angry that this is happening and people are choosing to be ignorant. Um,
Mhm.
and I think there's a lot of that anger, and that anger comes out as when we hear about, oh, the typical vegan, oh, you're not another vegan, are you? Because a lot of people will use that anger and frustration to go out and petition and just become an advocate, and speak up for the animals. But because there is a lot of anger and resentment and stuff behind it, the delivery is off. You do have some people who will just go out there and shout out about it. And we need those kind of people, because some people are receptive of it, but then also a lot of people are not receptive of it. Myself included. My friends were vegan, and they kind of like, they must have like sussed me out. And they were like, right, she's very science-based, she's very health-driven. And they would be like, oh, did you not think about this in this? Like the cholesterol in eggs and the saturated fats in meat. And it was kind of like one of those things. And they just took a very casual, relaxed approach. So they kind of had gone through their own like awakening and their cycles. And then they had been able to control that and not manipulate people, but just talk to people how they need to receive the information in order to do something good for themselves in the world. So yeah, I mean, there's my account. Sorry. But
Yeah.
yeah, is that a common thing?
Yeah, it absolutely resonates. And you're right. There are as many different approaches as there are vegans. So yes, it sounds like your friends had decided to take that particular approach with you, and it ended up working.
Mm,
I absolutely always encourage people to think. As vegans, when they're struggling to relate to non-vegans in an effective way, is just let's just take ourselves back to pre-vegan, because most of us were not born vegan.
mm,
Most of us, as you said, had those years of willful ignorance. Let's take ourselves back into that place where we already knew, but we weren't quite ready to make the change. Let's just put ourselves back there. How would we want vegans to be towards us? How would
mm,
they want to communicate? What would we want them to tell us?
mm.
And what would that feel like? How kind and compassionate and patient and gentle would we want them to be with us? And
Yeah.
how would we want them sharing things with us? And that's a really good guide. So it sounds
Yeah.
like your friends had it fairly right there.
Yeah, I think they'd been vegan for many, many years. They'd had many, many conversations with other people, so I think they'd had plenty of opportunity to get hold of to really calm their mindset, to be honest. So speaking of mindset, I've got some questions that I would love to ask you. Um, Before we go into that, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Uh, you know what, I'd probably just very quickly, just to follow on from
Yeah.
that first part of dystopia, which is that anguish,
Mm,
which results in that alienation. That's not the only impact it has. Often, then what we tend to do is we very quickly give up on those people closest to us,
mm,
having severed or lost some of those connections or reduced those connections. We decide to throw ourselves into what you've already alluded to, which is that advocacy and activism. We think, well, maybe the people who don't know us will be ready to listen, and we go out there on the streets and we do the holding the signs and the shouting and then the protesting, or it might be online activism as well. And we fall into this kind of trap of guilt and obligation, where we feel like we don't have the right to be happy until the animals are. As long as they're suffering, we don't get to have fun. We don't get to have time off until every last cage is empty. So we burn ourselves out with this action that often, again, is not very productive, because, again, we don't know how to communicate to strangers, just like we don't know how to communicate to our own friends and family. And so we run into lots of opposition, and then even like real, anger and pushback. So then we feel, ever deeper in dystopia. And adding to that, then we often also feel compelled to expose ourselves to lots of animal abuse, whether it's, we go out and on vigils, or we're watching footage because we feel compelled to witness the suffering, because we think it's going to help drive more action from us to encourage more. But unfortunately, what usually happens is we just end up more and more traumatized and feeling more and more powerless.
mm.
And then ultimately, sort of end stage dystopia, at the deepest point, we fall into this real kind of victim mentality, where now we feel just kind of at the mercy of the rest of the world, our friends, our family who aren't listening, the strangers who aren't listening. Now we're also just daily being triggered with all of this trauma that we've been accumulating, and we end up often in like anxiety and depression, and being very ineffective, not only for the animals but for ourselves. And we often then do fall into these kinds of unhealthy behaviors, things that give us a momentary relief from all that pain and anguish, but tend to then actually harm us in the long term. And I'm talking about things like overeating, over drinking, over binge watching television instead of choosing true self-care behaviors. So that's kind of like a nice little bundle of dystopia. It's really quite a nasty little vicious cycle of trauma, and kind of self-harm in the end. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of package that up.
Yeah, of course, of course. Definitely do that justice, because I'm there going, oh yeah, but also we experience this being healthy as well. But you definitely see a much lower side to the advocacy than I do. We're
Yeah.
focused on plant-based nutrition over here. So
Mhm.
that's why I saw you, and I was like, absolutely, like I'd love you to come and speak to our mindset, our vegans in the group. And I know there are quite a few active advocates in the group. There are some past activists, ex-activists, but mostly I think everyone in the group is looking at incorporating more plant-based foods. And but yeah, so this is really, really to help those vegans in here really struggling with things. So I think you kind of discussed it. Like, what are the biggest mental roadblocks that hold people back from thriving as a vegan, do you see?
Yeah, so the biggest mental roadblock is really that, let's call it misanthropy, which is basically the hatred of humankind that dystopia tends to lead us into, when we end up in this place of feeling really victimy and
Mhm.
powerless. We kind of get to the point of saying, nothing I do will ever be enough. Like I'm fighting and fighting and fighting, and I'm becoming exhausted, and I'm not seeing the change.
Mm.
So we get beaten down and burnt out. That's the biggest obstacle to us thriving as vegans, and that's the thing that we really need to be reversing.
So burnout. Um, and what was the first one? Sorry.
Oh gosh, now I've gone blank.
It was, but like the main one, would you say is burnout?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of falling
Sorry.
into that victim. I think I call it a victim mentality kind of thing, where
Yeah.
we feel like we are at the mercy of the world, the non-vegan world, and it is winning, and all of our struggles are just for nothing.
Which
Yeah.
is so crazy, because I'm here seeing the other side. I'm here seeing, actually no, the work that you're putting is working. I think when people don't turn someone vegan immediately, they think it's a lost cause. It absolutely is not. Do you know what? Like, as being someone online, like the standard typical like the statistic is that people need 9 to 12 touch points with someone before they completely trust you enough to want to work with you, right? That's just the standard typical touch point. That's going to be the same for veganism. Like people don't just hear vegan and they're like, oh yes, okay, I'll go overnight. It's a series of like seeding, right?
Yeah.
It's hearing it here and then here and then here from different people, different angles, different words, different scenarios, different examples that then also create that. So when
Yes.
you say things like that, like people feel like, they're giving up and or they want to give up and it doesn't feel like they're actually doing something. They absolutely are. Like they absolutely are. You're planting a seed, and that seed might not be the one that spurts and is the instant decision, but it's part of. And that's what we
Absolutely. You're
need. We need
planting
more
it.
parts of. Yeah.
Definitely. You're planting it, but the next person who comes along is going to water it.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. And we're dealing with two, I guess, maybe two separate scenarios here. One is the friends and the family who we keep seeing, and we can ourselves plant the seed and then water the seed and then nurture the seed and so on ourselves. And then there are all the people who we just meet incidentally. They might be people in the workplace or people we just meet out and about at the shops, whatever, who we just have a 5 minute conversation with. And there's an opportunity to plant the seed. We'll never see that seed get watered or grow, but we just have to trust that if we have planted it, if we've just asked them a question to start to raise their internal awareness,
Mm,
then we can trust that another person will come along in due course and then water that seed. So and
yeah.
we have to do that, and that is a mindset shift, understanding that we are, for most people, not going to take them from 0 to 100 in one conversation. And
Mm.
very, very, very few people will do that. So yes, thank you for mentioning that. That's absolutely true.
I like that. We can't take someone from 1 to 100 in one conversation.
Mm.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you get the occasional videos of people going and seeing the videos and then they're like, yes, I'm 100% vegan. But I guarantee you they've had a touch point before. Like it doesn't usually just happen like that. The decision can
Absolutely.
happen overnight, but the seeding, yeah, it takes a while.
Absolutely. They will have had multiple conversations with people who've then eventually led to suggesting the video, maybe sending them the link, encouraging them to actually watch the video before they've gone ahead and done that. And that's
Yeah.
that's just their final tipping point.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a health coach, I want to jump in here as well and say, hey, look, if you are feeling burnt out, making sure that you're looking after yourself first. Like you said, I feel like I can't put myself first. I can't be happy if the animals aren't happy. Like that is the total opposite. We know the saying, you can't pour from an empty pitcher. It cannot
Mhm.
ring any more true for this example, in my opinion, is you
Mhm.
cannot be out there um, I was going to say activating then. You cannot be out there advocating. This is why I asked you before. I was like, making sure I get my words right. You cannot be out there advocating on the front line, protesting. You cannot be out there if you are exhausted, if you're burnt out, if you feel like you have no power. Because even having that victim mentality, that looks like a lack of confidence. So can we see, just for those watching, can we see how this also applies to just everyday life and being healthy, right? We need that confidence, we need that energy, we need the healthy habits. We need to be eating good food. Yes, you can be vegan, but if you're not eating good food that is supporting your energy, your mental clarity, you're not going to be able to do the things that you need to do in order to help more people become vegan. So really looking after yourself is has to be a priority when this is what you want to do.
Absolutely. I'm because I'm not completely familiar with your program. I don't know if you speak to these, but
Yeah,
I
of course.
I speak to my clients about the pillars of health. It's one of the first things I
Yes.
check in with. Yes.
Yes.
So it's like, are you getting enough sleep? Like really fundamental, enough sleep. What's your nutrition like? Are you moving your body?
Yeah.
Are you managing your stress, which really is about mind management and managing your emotions? That's my key thing. And then finally, do you have a love connection and community? Like those things are all essential to be a healthy, balanced person to be then able to then give. If any of those things are lacking, you're going to be struggling to a certain extent. So making sure that my clients have got that stuff dialed in is really important to me, because we
Yeah.
know that every one of them impacts not only on like how we're feeling day to day, but really at a deeper level on our physiology and our psychology. So we know, for example, that if we're not getting enough sleep, we struggle to empathize with and feel compassion towards other people. And if
Mm.
we struggle to do that, we're already like, you know, 2 steps behind when it comes to having effective conversations. Similarly with nutrition, you know, if our nutrition isn't right, it's impacting on our hormones and lots of other things, our gut microbiome and so forth. It's just throwing us out. If our gut's not right, our mental health isn't going to be right either, and so on. So all of
Yeah.
that is really important.
I love that. 100%, 100%. And yeah, the fundamental pillars of health are the first things that we look through in terms of weight loss. But yeah, awesome. We're not here to talk about regenerate. We're here to talk about you. Awesome. So next question I have is, how can vegans handle criticism or lack of support from family, friends? And I just want to add like anyone really
Yes,
into that.
absolutely. And this applies to more than just being vegan. Of course, it applies to anything. So if you're on a, you know, a weight loss plan, for example, and you're needing the support of your family, it still applies. And so criticism or lack of support. So the first and most important thing is to not make it about ourselves. So this is where the mind management comes in. So whatever other people are thinking, feeling, doing, saying is entirely about themselves. It's a result of the way that they process incoming information, and what they choose to do with it. So the the biggest clue I can give people is, get used to saying to yourself, whatever that person is doing or thinking in terms of not supporting me, it is not about me. It's not my fault. It doesn't reflect on me. It is a choice that they're making. So this is where the thoughts, feelings, actions, results thing comes in. I make sure that my clients learn how to take complete ownership, accountability, and responsibility for their thoughts, feelings, actions, and results, and they allow other people to take responsibility for theirs. That's
Mm.
absolutely key for that. So in terms of what does that look like in practical terms? So let's say somebody is applying it to the vegan context, somebody is vegan and there is a lack of support from their family. So let's say lack of support might look like this person's family insists on having like big meaty barbecues every family gathering. That's just what they've always done. And this vegan has shared that, you know, they find it, you know, distressing, or, you know, they struggle with that. And would the family maybe give them some consideration? And then not only does the family say, no, our tradition is more important, but then they might actually actively give them a hard time. They might actually, you know, tease them, make jokes at their expense, and so forth. So they might experience that as a real lack of support. Now, the key is for that vegan not to make it mean, well, I must just be completely useless and ineffective and unlovable and unworthy of any love or respect. That's the
Mm.
worst thing we could possibly ever do to ourselves, is make it about ourselves. Instead, we can choose to turn that around and say, okay, these are all the reasons why my family might reasonably be acting this way because of their combined life experience. This is the mindset that they've adopted.
Mm.
Um, so the very first step is simply to let go of that attachment to the other people's actions, so that we can step aside and see it as something that's not connected to us. We can observe it objectively, and we can then make appropriate requests of those people. And this is where it comes to having vulnerable conversations with those family members,
Mm-hmm.
so that they get to step into empathy and compassion with us. Because what we often do, I guess, wrong as vegans is we try to come at it from that real guilting approach. We might not be thinking of it in terms of we're trying to guilt people, but that's the impact it's having. So what we'll say instead is, we'll focus on the animals. Don't you know what that animal went through? I've already told you. I can't believe you're still, you know, doing it. I can't believe you're ignoring it. Those kinds of things. That just raises resistance in the other people. If we instead come at it from, hey, I'm your family member. I love and value you, and I want to spend time with you. when you say and do these things, I can't help but think these things. And that results in me feeling this way. And those feelings lead me to to want to disconnect, to get away, to reduce our connection. I struggle to be like truly present and have a good time and enjoy being with the family when I'm experiencing these things. So, out of kindness and compassion towards me, I'm going to ask you, as somebody who loves me, to please give some consideration to my experience and no longer do X, Y, and Z, or do these other things instead.
Mm.
That's something that I equip my clients to do. So I give them this little template for vulnerable conversations, where it's really structured on, this is the circumstance. The circumstance is neutral. I'm not judging you. But when that happens, that fact happens, when you barbecue a pig at the family gathering in front of me, I can't help but thinking of the suffering that animal went through. That's the thing that comes to my mind. I can't help that. That leaves me feeling extremely distressed and in anguish. And when I'm feeling that way, I struggle to be present and connected and enjoy your company and that of the rest of the family, because all I want to do is to run away from that anguish,
Mm.
right? And so the result for me is then a disconnection from you and the rest of the family. And I don't want that. I want to be connected and loving towards you. So, in service of that, I'm going to ask you, maybe can we no longer be like spit roasting a pig? Or,
Mm.
can we put the barbecue on the other side of the house away from the entertainment area so I can, hang out and enjoy time with the family without being exposed to the sights and the smells of that kind of the thing that is a horror to me. So
Mm.
that's an example.
I like that. And it sounds very similar to like the setting boundaries. It's like when X happens, I feel this way. And when we're setting boundaries, if I'm assuming like if you've had those vulnerable conversations and they still persist to do this, that's when you set the boundary. So then you need to
Yes.
say again, when X happens, I feel X, I feel Y. So when this happens again, I will do blank.
Mhm. Yeah,
And the way
absolutely.
that oh, sorry,
Oh no, you go, go.
I was going to say it, and the way that I coach clients through that is that the most important thing is that we follow through on it. The
Yes.
most important thing is that we follow through, because usually people set boundaries, and yes, the hardest thing might not be the conversation. The hardest thing is actually reinforcing that boundary, right? Actually doing the thing that you promised that you would do, removing yourself from the situation, not texting back, not answering the phone call, whatever it is
Yeah.
following through on those boundaries. So I like that you are recommending that they have the conversations and asking them for their actions to change. But then, I mean, I'm assuming you probably you already have this in your program where, okay, so you've had the conversation, they're not going to change. Now you need to protect yourself as well. And that's where we set personal boundaries.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that you've shared with this with your clients as well, that boundaries are all about protecting our own personal, emotional, even physical space. And they're never ever about controlling other people's behavior or punishing them.
Mhm.
So that's a brilliant thing about boundaries, is that for that reason, it doesn't even need their participation or cooperation. So initially we have that vulnerable conversation. So we share vulnerably, so they can step into empathy and actually develop the desire to want to help us because supposedly they love us. So that's a vulnerable conversation. Then there's the request, which is where, in the interest of this relationship, I'm asking you for this. And then they have a choice of ignoring that request or complying with the request. And if they choose to ignore the request, we get to decide what boundary we then want to set to protect ourselves. And it is entirely up to us whether we choose to share that boundary with the person or not. I think in this particular example that I shared before, it makes sense and is probably respectful and appropriate to say to the person, look, it's entirely up to you. I'm not asking you to change. I'm not asking you to become vegan. I'm asking you to help me to feel more comfortable in the family setting. It is entirely up to you what you want to do. And there's no hard feelings or judgment from me if you decide to not do what I ask. Just letting you know, if I turn up and there is a pig being spit roasted in the patio, I'm going to turn around and leave.
Mhm.
That's purely for my own protection. No hard feelings. I still love you.
Mhm.
That's setting a boundary with the person. And then, of course, upholding that boundary is turning up, seeing the thing, and then walking out and leaving. That's upholding it. And unfortunately, this is where so many of us fall down. So many of us have been raised with these people pleasing tendencies, where we might
Yeah.
even set a boundary with the person and then just let them trample all over it, and then they'll never take us seriously. But then the other part of boundaries is that in some circumstances we actually don't even need to tell the person about the boundary. We just get to decide that if we have made a request, and if something happens, we're just going to take this particular action for our
Mhm.
own sake, and the other person doesn't even need to know about it. And that might be appropriate in, for example, workplace situations. We might actually not even want to make a request. Like in the workplace, if we sit around with our colleagues and they're eating all their meaty dishes and we're feeling distressed by that, we may not feel close and connected enough with them to share vulnerably. So it might be only superficial work type relationships. We might not be ready to go there. We can always simply decide, I'm just going to go eat my lunch separately.
Mm.
I spend enough time hanging out and talking with these people all day. I don't need to be having my lunch with them. And
Mhm.
then if they ask, hey, why are you taking yourself away? If any one of them cares enough to notice and ask, then I get to have a conversation with them to whatever extent I'm prepared to be vulnerable with them.
I think an underlying pattern to everything that we're talking about right now, and even applied in the health space, is you can't change someone's actions. You can't change what they do. You can influence their thoughts around things. So we can influence them to become vegan. We can influence them to become healthier, but we cannot. And it is also not our right to change other people. Like we have no right to physically go in and try and change someone's behaviors, change what they say. And so when we like release that almost that personal self of responsibility. It's like, oh well, it's I need to make sure that they change their behavior. That is almost a little bit selfish, because we're changing them to what we believe is right. Um, whether we know that we're right or not, because it's getting them to become vegan. But at the end of the day, I liked your example of being in the office space. Like we cannot go in and tell people that they must be eating like just salad sandwiches instead, or that they must eat somewhere else. It's not about changing other people's behaviors. It's about requesting what you would like, and it's down to them whether they choose to or not. And yes, I know that it's not great to hear, especially when we're trying to support the animals, but that at the end of the day is pretty much the bottom line. Would you say? Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think in that workplace scenario, what we can do is if somebody wants to join us, we can say, listen, if you want to join me, I'm going to ask that you not bring animal products with you.
Yeah.
You're welcome to come and sit with me while I eat and have a chat, but please either eat your food first or make sure that it's not animal products. I'd really appreciate that. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's absolutely a way of doing it. And you're right, we can't even control other people's thoughts. We can't control their feelings. We can't control their behavior. Like none of those things are within our control. To a certain extent, there might be a degree of influence.
Mhm.
And I think there's an important distinction about the intention behind any request that we make. Because I think secretly, many of us vegans, we want the other person to change their behavior right
Hmm.
along with the attitude. So we're
Yeah.
wanting them to, like, we're asking or telling them what they should be doing, what we think they should be doing, but really hoping that it'll also come with that immediate change in attitude or mindset shift. And the reality is that for a lot of people, that's not possible straight away. And what's been shown, and I think it's just a fascinating psychological thing, is that for many people, attitude follows behavior. So if we ask somebody who cares about us to eat plant-based with us for our own comfort and our ability to connect with them, and they choose to do that because they care about us, when they're enjoying that plant-based food with us, they tend to start to feel more positively inclined towards eating plant-based.
Mhm.
So, because human psychology has this trick that the actions we're already doing, we feel compelled to justify. So if we're taking that action, even if it wasn't our intention, if we're doing it as a favor to someone else, once we're doing it, we now feel like we need to be able to justify why we're doing it. And so we actually start being like, oh, well, it's actually healthier anyway. And hey, look, I know animals are getting harmed. And so it starts to it works on lots of different levels because it lowers their resistance. It exposes them to the food. They realize it's actually edible. They realize it's healthy. They realize it's easy to attain and to prepare and so forth. So lots of barriers are coming down for them, because often their resistance to becoming vegan is all of these barriers in their mind about how, all the bad things about it.
Mm.
So those barriers start to break down. But then, in addition to that, when they're not actively engaged in consuming the animals, they start to open up to talking about veganism. They can then start to step into curiosity, and say, hey, so maybe what's so bad about dairy? Like, can we just, like now that I'm eating this lovely, delicious plant-based meal, what's so bad about dairy anyway? Or, why would you not just have an egg in this, or that kind of thing? Then they're open, they're actually inviting the conversation. We're not pushing it at them.
Mm.
And
Mm.
once they've given us that permission, they're actually willing to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So I do love the approach of asking, requesting for that change in behavior, but purely for us, because
Mm-hmm.
they care about us as a way to help us. And they get to feel good about it then, because they're like, oh, I'm helping that poor vegan who's suffering so much, right? I'm
Yeah.
demonstrating that I care.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Because I don't want to keep you for too long, we've got a couple of questions. I'd love to power through the questions if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
What's one powerful mindset shift that helps people to feel empowered? And I'm gonna move along to my seat while you're talking, by the way, because my feet are burning.
absolutely.
I forgot to put shoes on my treadmill,
Oh
and now my feet are
no.
burning, like the
Oh dear.
socks, burning holes in my socks here.
Oh no. Okay, you go right ahead. Okay, so most powerful mindset shift is simply understanding that we get to control our thoughts. Okay, so and the important thing about this is circumstances are neutral, right? No matter what's going on in the world, a circumstance is just neutral. It has no value in
Sorry, I'm
itself. Like,
laughing because this is exactly how I describe it to my clients. So you
great,
go.
perfect, good. So they've already heard this, which is really great. So it has no value, that circumstance has no value or meaning until we give it a meaning. And the way that we give it a meaning is with our thoughts, and our thoughts are 100% optional. We get to choose whatever thought we want. And of course, once we have a
Done the
thought,
same
that
training as
thought
me,
drives
haven't you?
probably it drives
I love
our feelings drive our actions and our results and so forth. Once we realize this, we get to step into like 100% ownership and control of everything, every problem we need to solve, every goal we want to achieve. We get to take the drama out of it and just see it like maths. It's like, this is where we are, this is where we want to be going, this is the gap in between, these are the actions we need to take in order to fill that gap, and this is how we need to feel in order to power that action. These are the thoughts we need to have in order to create those feelings. Simple. It's as simple as that. That is the single most powerful mindset shift we can have, and it takes us out of that victim mentality, that below the line thinking, to above the line. So in my coach training, I got this thing that said basically above the line thinking is OAR, ownership, accountability, responsibility. Below the line is BED, blame, evasion, denial. That's victim mentality. And our coach used to say, don't tell me, like, tell me awesome stories, don't tell me bedtime stories. So basically, step out of victim mentality, take full ownership. Where have you got power, control, and influence over this situation? That's really it in a nutshell.
I love that. And yes, absolutely. I think over the weekend I was feeling really, really shit and really low and really shitty, and I was like, "Come on, Bianca, use your like coach yourself here." And it really is true that we get to choose our thoughts and we get to choose our feelings, and sometimes it feels good to feel crap. Like it's just indulgent. It's indulgent for us to feel crap. Sometimes we feel like we should feel crap. So activists on the line who might be seeing animals going off to slaughter in a truck, for example, they might feel compelled, like socially, they should feel theoretically like they should
Mhm.
feel guilty and shameful. But that, like, you can choose that, or you can choose to feel empowered in that position and say, do you know what? This is the reason why I do what I do. This, you can sit there in guilt and shame, or you can sit there in in pride and empowerment that you are doing what you're doing to the best of your ability.
Absolutely. You can use that same circumstance to drive completely different actions and results, and we
Yes.
get to choose. And
Yes.
just becoming aware of our own thoughts, because
Mm.
very often they are subconscious, and we just let them happen, and we sit in this sort of stew of victim mentality without realizing that there's just all these really victimy, disempowering beliefs, which a belief is really just a thought you've had so many times you stop questioning it, right? So these thoughts that are on autopilot in the background all day long, playing the tune of our day, leaving us feeling crap without us even realizing why we're feeling crap. And that's where we have the opportunity to sit down and actually just allow those thoughts to come to the surface and then examine them and decide, do we want to keep having those thoughts or do we want to choose different ones?
Beautiful. I have been writing notes as we've been going along, so there's been some really good stuff. I'll probably post it in the comments or something. I love that. A belief is just a thought that that you keep thinking so much so that you just believe that it's true.
Yeah, stop questioning it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to say that like as we're growing up, we take beliefs and it's like I compare it to being at Christmas and like someone who doesn't really know you gives you a shitty gift and they hand you a gift and you're like it's a hand me down or like it's slightly broken, it probably smells, it's not that great. And it's like we feel compelled to keep it, and that's what I think of beliefs as. It's like you're keeping that hand-me-down belief, right? That's literally been passed through generations, and you're choosing to keep that. Like you can give it away to the charity store, you can give it away, and you don't need to tell them that's okay. But at the end of the day, you need to recognize that just because it's in your hands does not mean that it has to stay there forever. You get to give it away, or you get to bring in new, different versions of that.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Uh,
Definitely. And often just simply bringing it to our conscious awareness for the first time allows us to see it for what it is and realize it is ridiculous and it doesn't serve us and we can simply let it go. Sometimes it's a little bit more sticky and it takes a little bit of dislodging with some intentional alternative thought generation, and
mm.
practicing that thought until it becomes the new belief. So that's definitely a skill.
And this ties into the video training that I actually did last week. And I think there's two ways that you can do this. One is have a coach pull it out of you because they get to see your thoughts from a neutral
Mhm.
perspective. And two, journaling. Like
Yes,
journaling is where you see your thoughts. Like exactly what you just said. You've got to like you need to pay attention to them, and then you need to recognize that, oh, hang on a minute, that's a thought. It's not necessarily like something that's true. And when we journal, when we write these things out, we get to see our beliefs on paper, and then we get to start questioning, well, okay, is that something that I want to keep?
definitely. Fully agree with you. I do exactly the same thing. I get clients to do like a brain dump type of thing,
Mm,
yeah, and then basically just look at each one of those thoughts that they've dumped on the page, and often it's surprising what they find there.
awesome. I love that. So, how do you help clients take full ownership and accountability for their choices?
It's exactly by, yeah, examining that. So I get them to feed all of that stuff into a thought model. So basically, I get them to write down, this is a circumstance, this is the thought, the feeling, the action, result, and they can start with anyone. So if they're getting results that they're not happy with, like their family aren't supportive, for example, that is the result that they start with, and they work backwards from there. Okay, so I'm getting this result. What are the actions I'm taking that are resulting in this result? And this is where they don't get to blame their family. It doesn't get to be because, well, they're selfish or ignorant or whatever. It's like, no, obviously my communication isn't right. If I'm going nowhere with them and they're not moving even a tiny little bit, my communication's not right. What actions am I taking? Okay, let's have a look at that. Okay, what feelings are driving those actions? What I'm actually feeling towards these people? Am I sitting there in judgment, and frustration and annoyance with them? And what are the thoughts that are generating that? Am I thinking that, well, you are just willfully ignorant and greedy and whatever it is? So working back and completing that little model and having a look. And what we always find is that the original thought that we have or the belief that we have that's driving that whole scenario is reflected in the result. So if our thought is like, these people are a lost cause and they're a lost cause and they're greedy and I'm getting nowhere with them, the result is that you're going to get nowhere with them.
Mm,
So what I then get people to do is to create the alternative model. So I'm like, okay, what result would you rather have? What is the actual result you want from this situation? And then work backwards. What action would you have to take in order to get that result? What feeling would drive that action? What thoughts would you need to be having? And that's where we start shifting their thoughts intentionally.
100%. Yeah, this is
Work.
this is the thought work that
Brilliant.
I do with my clients. We do it on our free challenge as well, and our free 5-day boot camp. It really is, your beliefs create your identity creates your behaviors and your actions. And I think I've seen loads of different like variations of this, but ultimately your beliefs are creating the person that you believe you are. That is changing the so my my cat's been scratching at the door to get out this whole time, and he's just been released. My partner's clearly heard him scratching. Um, so your beliefs create your identity creates the actions and behaviors that you exhibit, and then that creates a specific result, which then in turn is confirming. It's like confirmation bias loop, right? Um, totally agree. Totally agree. Awesome. So to take full ownership and accountability of your choices is look at the results that you are seeing and work out what beliefs are driving that. Did I hear that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. And then, of course, we get to examine those beliefs. It's like when we haven't, when we've had a belief, often it just seems to us like it's just a fact. It's just the way the world is. It's like an unbreakable law of the universe. When it's not, it's just a thought that we've stopped questioning.
Mm,
So often this is where coaches do come in, is that we need to prompt people to consider this because for them, it's just, they cannot see that it's an optional thought. So being able to ask them, well, what if you weren't thinking that? What if you didn't believe that? And then also digging a little bit deeper in terms of when did you start to believe that? How did you come to believe that? And by doing that little bit of uncovery work, often it leads back to like often just a single incident in their childhood.
mm,
I've got a story from my own childhood where I stopped being able to cry until I was in my 30s because of one thing my father said to me when I cried one day when I stepped on a bee and got stung, right? And he was trying to be helpful and he thought he was being like, he was teaching me how to manage my emotions. Unfortunately, he completely screwed it up
mm,
and it stopped me from being able to express my emotions for many, many, many years and led to a lot of issues in relationships. And I had to unlearn how to unlearn that and learn how to express my emotions again. So these are the kinds of things that, when people come at us with these limiting beliefs, if we help them to unpick it and they go back, oh my God, I was like 7 years old and it was this incident. And in that moment, it served me and got me through. But for the rest of my life, it's just been harming me, this belief, then
mm,
they can let it go.
100%. And it's just like when that happens, it's wonderful
Yeah.
to watch. What's one daily habit that can help someone build a stronger, more resilient mindset?
Oh, I think you've already mentioned it. It's that journaling piece or whatever that looks like for people.
Mm,
So I kind of tell my clients it's a little bit like meditation. A lot of people are not into meditation and can't actually empty their mind. And I'm like, don't, that's not the point. So sit there, just close your eyes and sit there with your thoughts for 5 minutes and allow them to come. Allow them to come. And then everything that comes into your mind, write it down because that's when often those subconscious thoughts do surface. And if you start your day by doing that and getting it all down and sorting through those thoughts and deciding which ones serve you and which ones don't, which ones you want to keep, it will allow you to set yourself up for your day. So I find that a brilliant starting tool for the day, but also at the end of the day, if we've had a rough day and we're feeling all kinds of feelings, then that's a really great way to work through that as well.
Beautiful. Okay, so I've got here some form of reflection. So whether it's journaling, meditation, talking to someone, being coached, basically working out what thoughts serve you, which you want to keep and which you want to throw. I love that. I love that. Well, that's pretty much like everything they're the main questions that I really wanted to cover. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to add that maybe we've not talked about or something that you were like, I really want to talk about this?
Oh, okay. So one final thing is probably processing emotions. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what techniques you've taught your clients around how to do this, but actually being able to feel our emotions in a way that serve us. So emotions are basically just sensations in our body that last about 1 minute to 90 seconds, literally while those neuropeptides that create them like do their thing and do the tingly feelings, and then dissipate. So an emotion doesn't last very long at all, yet we have a tendency to carry feelings around for a really long time and stew in them. And recognizing that that's only because we keep having the thoughts that keep creating those feelings that make us feel terrible. So having the ability to process that emotion and let it pass through our body and then leave us is enormously helpful.
Mm.
So I do have a process for my clients as well, which I know I've shared with you, for being able to just take 1 minute, literally while the emotion is even happening, to just allow it to happen. First of all, don't fight it, don't bottle it up, don't push it aside. Um, Allow yourself to feel it in your body and describe it to yourself. Give it a name as a feeling outside of yourself, as in this is anger, this is frustration, and not identifying with it, and then taking ownership, which basically means saying, I know that I'm creating this feeling by the thoughts that I'm having, and then making a decision about, do I want to keep it or not? And it's as easy as that to let go of an emotion that we don't want to be having and doesn't serve us.
Mm.
So that's a really important tool that I teach my clients, because what it allows them to do then is to clear that emotion from their system and not reach for some kind of dopamine hit, some kind of buffer, for the junk food or the alcohol or whatever it is that they might resort to otherwise, in order to dampen or dull the impact of that emotion that they otherwise don't know how to deal with.
Yeah, I think this is so powerful. I actually had a conversation with a client the other day, and she's had just this crazy resistance to doing one thing. She knows that it's simple. She knows that it's not difficult. Like there's no physical difficulty about it, but she's just had this resistance to it. And we boiled it down and boiled it down to the fact that she just didn't want to feel failure. Right. And it's
Yes.
like, well, that's just a feeling that you get to choose. So first and foremost, we don't have to choose to feel like a failure. We can feel proud that we attempted. Right. So just let's talk about that. So we talked about how she was just choosing to feel failure if it didn't work out to plan. Right. But then also like this whole resistance, like months of resistance to doing this one task because she was so scared to feel failure. Let's just like put that out in a sentence again, right? It is basically she has not been taking one action because she doesn't want to feel an emotion. Now,
Yes.
like you said, feeling an emotion takes about a minute to 90 seconds.
Okay.
And so our brain will create so much resistance just naturally, like it's what our brains are designed to do. It will have us running for the hills, running into fire to avoid feeling a negative emotion. It's like, thanks, brain, for trying to keep me safe, but this is not the
Yes.
same as being chased by a tiger or a lion, you know?
Exactly.
And so we can go months and months and even years just trying to avoid feeling an emotion. When you realize that it's just a physical sensation in your body and it's not a life or death thing, which our brain thinks that it pretty much is, we get to work through it and we can I was going to say we can get unstick ourselves.
Yes.
We can
Spot
become
on.
unstuck.
Agreed. That's exactly it. And this is why I just wanted to raise that as a final thing. If we know how to just feel a feeling, it can be gone in a minute, and we just get on with it. No drama. We just do the action we need to take.
I like that. I like that. And that's, very much when people are on the front line and they are seeing some horrific stuff, hearing horrific stuff, filming horrific stuff. For those vegans who are advocating, it is important for you to process your emotions. And I love that you said that. I think actually I personally think this is the most powerful thing that we've talked about so far, is it's okay to feel an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You can choose your thoughts and you can choose to feel something else instead, but let it come. Like let the guilt or the shame or the sadness or the joy, whatever it is, wherever you're experiencing it, like allow for it to wash over you because as soon as you push it down and suppress it, that's when we start manifesting illness and pain and heartache and
And trauma. And as you
trauma.
said, with those activists, the way that, and even non-activists, the ones who just watch the footage and become traumatized, the way that the trauma happens is we don't deal with the emotion.
Hmm.
We don't go through the processes. We need to get that distress, that survival stress that we experience, that secondary traumatic stress, out of our body. We store it up. And that's what ends up being trauma. If we don't store it up, we don't get traumatized. And that's how the effective activists who've been doing it for many, many years and remain positive and effective do it. They know how to process that distress when it arises, so it doesn't become trauma.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, I've taken up so much of your time. I really appreciate you coming in and speaking for the vegans today. I appreciate it. We do have quite a lot of vegans. Like I said, some are actively protesting and doing incredible things out there. But I think if you're still watching this and you're not necessarily 100% vegan, or even don't want to be 100% vegan, or doing all of the fun, crazy shit on the streets, a lot can be taken away from this conversation, and I think it really boils down to, like, everything boils down to it, you are the master of your mind. Like, just because you have a thought doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you a good person. It makes you a person. So whether it's a positive thought or a negative thought, you get to choose, you get to change, you get to create the results that you're seeing by changing your thoughts and your mindset. And I love who you work for. I love the voice that you have. And yeah, like when I saw that one reel, I was like, we need to have a chat. So I appreciate you for coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How can people connect with you and learn more about your coaching and your program?
Sure. So you can find me anywhere on the internet as the Vegan Mindset Coach. So just Googling the Vegan Mindset Coach will bring up my website and also my Facebook and my Instagram. So they're the three places where I'm present. Fairly simple. Currently, if you Google the Vegan Mindset Coach, the website that comes is called wholepurpose.net, because I originally named my business Whole Purpose, and I won't go into why I did that. But because I've now become recognized as the Vegan Mindset Coach, I'm literally in the process of changing that domain name to theveganmindsetcoach.com. That's
Awesome.
in progress right now.
Mm.
So I will be known as the Vegan Mindset Coach everywhere. And on Instagram and Facebook, it is just the Vegan Mindset Coach. So very simple to find.
Good, strong branding, girl. We need to talk
Thank
business.
you.
We need to talk business. I love your branding, and yeah, I hear you. My business is called Overhaul, and my email, my website, it's all Overhaul. And I like, it came out of nowhere. I was literally looking at a piece of paper, and I was like, I need a business name. And I saw Overhaul, and I was like, Overhaul Health and Wellness, that'll do. And I think I just not even had a coffee. I was like, I don't know. And then it just came about. And then all of a sudden, before I know it, like, everything is titled and labeled Overhaul. And I'm like, oh crap, well, I'm gonna have to stick with this now, aren't I?
Yep. Might as well
Cool.
own it.
Yeah, I get you. I get you. And I think that you said that you're going to share a really, really exciting freebie with my audience. So anyone watching this, 5 steps to process emotion in a way that serves you. I love this. I love this. I want to take this for myself and my clients. Is that something that you're sharing with us?
Yes, definitely.
Fantastic, fantastic. Anything to say about that?
Oh, it's essentially the process I ran through earlier about that. Just I very briefly went through those 5 steps of processing that emotion. So yeah, it just gives you a step-by-step guide for doing it. So you can literally sit with it and work your way through it. And then once you become used to it, you can literally do it in a minute.
Bloody brilliant. I need to steal this for my clients. Thank you so much. And what I'll do is I'll drop feel free, like, when this loads, feel free to drop your handle in there, drop your Facebook in there. And if anyone wants Anita's freebie, just type in freebie in the chat, and she'll ping you a message and send it over. How does that sound?
Awesome. That sounds great.
Fantastic.
Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
You're so welcome. I'm going to hang out from this Zoom completely, but I'll send you a little message. So thank you so much for today. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.